Hello riders, this is Justin with EBR, and today we're going to be reviewing the RadWagon 5. This is a review I've been waiting for a few years to do, as Rad hasn't updated the wagon since 2020. It's been a while, and the questions I asked when we got this bike were, 1, are there enough improvements and upgrades in the RadWagon 5 to earn our recommendation? And 2, can this cargo bike replace your car or your minivan? Stick with us as we dive into the review of the RadWagon 5. Okay, we are going to do a full walkthrough of the RadWagon 5 as there's a lot here and Rad has made several key upgrades and improvements. The RadWagon 5 is a Class 3 e-bike with an MSRP of $2,399. Again, that's as of time of shooting. Don't hold it against us if that price changes. Going Class 3 is a pretty big change versus the RadWagon 4, which was Class 2. Rad was a stickler for quite a while with keeping their bikes at Class 2 only. I personally like this move by Rad to increase the bike to Class 3 speeds, as that makes this a much more capable commuter that can keep up with traffic better when needed. And as a cargo bike, it's been designed to be loaded up with gear or people. And as we go through these specs, just keep that in mind. I am very particular with cargo bikes. I don't like brands skimping on things like frame stiffness, brakes, and other safety features simply because people will be riding these bikes with a lot of additional weight on the back. And that includes parents riding around town with their kids. So with that background and insight into how particular we are with cargo bikes in mind, let's jump in. First off, the RadWagon 5 is UL certified to both 2849, so the entire electrical system, and 2271, the battery. You have two color options, black and metallic blue. They sent us the black version here, and we actually got the Rad Expand in the metallic blue, so I've seen both colors on bikes. My take? I really appreciate how Rad has moved beyond their classic orange and black colorways. I like the colors. I think Rad did a good job pairing something dark black with a lighter blue color. Moving on, the total max payload is 375 pounds with a max rider weight of 265 pounds. The bike weighs in at 86 pounds with the battery and drops just over 10 pounds to 75.6 pounds without it. So that's a 25-pound difference in payload capacity in exchange for 10 pounds more in weight when you compare it again to the previous version, the RadWagon 4. As I've analyzed and ridden this bike, I think the reason it's heavier and has a higher payload capacity is because of the frame. This frame is extremely rigid and beefy. It really feels more solid than I expected, and I think that stiffness that you get is worth the extra 10 pounds of weight. Okay, moving on to sizing options. Rad recommends the bike for riders from 4 foot 11 inches all the way to 6 foot 3. It's a pretty wide range, but come in closer and I'll show you how they get there, as it's all done with the adjustable seat post. The seat post will adjust from 30.5 inches to 41.8 inches if measured from the ground, and if you measure from the bottom of the pedal stroke, that range goes from 25 inches to 37 inches, so a 12-inch differential. The next thing you'll notice is the fairly low step over height. It's 19.8 inches, so it's a fairly approachable bike and easy to step over and get on the saddle. The reach is 14.2 inches and the wheelbase is 50.7 inches, making the RadWagon 5 slightly more compact than the previous model by about 3 inches. The tires are another area where Rad switched things up, and I think for the better. They are now 20 by 3.3 inches wide instead of the 22-inch tires they have on the Wagon 4. Personally, I like the move to the 20-inch tires for 2 reasons. First, it's easier to find a replacement tube, and you'll have more options for replacement tires. Second, it lowers your center of gravity by 1 inch, and that does improve the handling and overall feel of the bike, in my opinion. Now, when you put all of that together, you get Rad's official size recommendations, which are again that the bike should fit riders between 4 foot 11 inches to 6 foot 3 inches. I think 4 foot 11 is accurate. However, we've had 2 6 foot 5 riders test this bike and both felt like the bike was comfortable and they were able to get nice leg extension when pedaling. With the seat post extension, the bike fits riders with up to 37-inch inseams, and that's a pretty dang long inseam. Basically, if you're a taller rider, just know you might end up leaning forward a bit more than your vertically challenged counterparts. For what it's worth, I'm 5'11" and it fits me really well. Okay, so now let's walk through the rest of the bike. First, you have front and rear plastic fenders and an integrated wheel cover. Again, you've heard me say this, but I'm a big fan of plastic fenders over metal. They're quieter and they just don't get dinged up as easily. I also really like the wheel cover as it keeps small hands and feet from getting tangled there in the rear spokes. Next, you have rear brake lights with turn signals on the back, and then up front you have a 200 lumen light with reflectors. Keep in mind that the front light is more for cars and trucks to see you while riding versus light up the bike path for you to see. So if you're doing any night riding, I do recommend getting a stronger light. Next, you have a lot of mounting points on this bike. There are 4 mounting points on the front for front racks. You have mounting points on both the top tube and the down tube, and then you have quite a few mounting points on the rear rack. You have 8 mounting points on the top of the rack, 4 points on both the rear and the front, and then 2 additional mounts on the bottom of both sides of the rack. Like I said, there are a lot of mounting points that make this rear rack very functional and versatile, especially with its high 120-pound weight capacity. With that capacity, the rack is compatible with a lot of Rad's accessories. These include Rad's front and rear baskets, their hard shell locking panniers, the RadWagon caboose, the RadWagon deckhand, the Thule Yep child seat, and a lot more. One thing I've always thought Rad did a great job with is accessories, and I think that comes from their overarching goal of getting people out of cars and onto bikes. They really do look at their bikes as car replacements. Of course, with cargo bikes, accessories are especially important. I actually don't know if anyone is going to buy this bike and not add on some accessories. My personal favorites are the running boards, the RadWagon deck pad, and the deckhand. The RadWagon 5 is one of the bikes I feel very comfortable taking to the store or movie theater with my 7-year-old, and these are the accessories that I choose when I do that. Now we are diving into the beating heart and soul of the e-bike, the motor and battery. I usually wait to the end of the section to tell you what I think, but the short version is that I really like what Rad has done with the electrical system on this model. First, the battery. Along with the other 2024 models, Rad included their new Safe Shield battery with the new wagon. It's UL certified to UL 2271, but then Rad went a step further and encased every single battery cell with a fire-resistant resin. Now, I know a few other brands are starting to do this as well, but I do want to give 2 very big thumbs up to Rad for jumping on this battery technology early, and it's something I hope we see many more brands doing in the future. The battery also has a really good capacity. It's a 48 volt, 15 amp hour, 720 watt hour battery with claimed range up to 60 miles. Now, we have gotten north of 50 miles in our real world range tests, which I think is really good given the style and weight of this bike. The Wagon 5 also comes with a torque sensor instead of a cadence sensor, which typically gives you more range as well, and I think contributes to that 50 mile plus range that we got. Moving on, the bike comes with a 2 amp charger that takes about 6 to 7 hours to fully charge from zero. I would actually like to see a 4 amp charger for faster charging speeds, but I'm okay with the 2 amps given all the safety features of the battery. Finally, looking at the bike, it's pretty obvious that the battery is an external battery. Rad is not trying to hide the fact that this is an e-bike. However, Rad has moved the location of the battery more towards the rear of the bike, which I like both for looks and for handling. I think it hides the battery a bit more than before, and it doesn't look bad at all. And finally, because it's not integrated, I also find it fairly easy to remove and charge it up, which is really nice. Moving on, you'll see the controller mounted right behind the battery, which I both like and dislike. I like how easy it is to access in case you need to replace it or do repairs, but it is exposed and can get a little dirtier than a controller that's located inside the down tube. Moving further back, we have the motor, and Rad has done some very good things here. They spec the bike with a 750 watt, 95 Newton meter torque rear hub motor. Now, while Rad has stuck to their guns with the max wattage still being 750 watts, power to ground, as they like to say, they have increased the max torque from 65 to 95 Newton meters. That extra torque helps out a lot when you're carrying cargo and are climbing hills. In fact, in my hill testing, I found the Wagon 5 to climb hills even slightly faster than the Radster Trail and Road, which are both very speedy and powerful uphill. So Stepping back and looking at the E part of this bike, I can't say how impressed I am with the upgrades and the improvements over the past models. In the past, Rad really kept their bikes right at class 2, 750 watts, and when I would compare them versus other class 3 e-bikes with higher max wattages, the Rads didn't have the same hill climbing capabilities or the same zip to them. The new Wagon 5 though, has that power and that zip. It's very impressive and really a lot of fun to ride. Okay, before we take the bike out on the trail, let's walk through the components quickly. I'll cover the specs, then hold most of my analysis of the components until we go for a ride and I show you what the bike can do. First up, the drivetrain. Rad spec'd the bike with a 7-speed 11 to 34 tooth Shimano drivetrain, a 50 tooth front chainring, and a 170 millimeter crank. So that's a 310% gear range. The brakes are non-branded hydraulic disc brakes, and I'm going to give a thumbs up to Rad for pairing these with 180 by 2.3 millimeter rotors. I think it makes a lot of sense to put thicker rotors on the bike, given it's a cargo bike, and thicker rotors will help improve stopping performance. The saddle is a normal padded saddle, but I really like the grip handle at the rear. It just helps with moving the heavy bike around when you're not riding. Comfort-wise, I'm not personally picky with saddles, but I haven't heard anyone else in the office complain, and I found it to be very comfortable even after 20 plus miles of riding. Moving up front, we have an RST guide suspension fork with 45 millimeters of travel and a tapered steerer and through axle for stiffness. I'm going to give Rad bonus points for those last two features, and Ben, I'm sure, is going to expand on them more for you when we get to the mechanic stake. As we move to the cockpit, you can see how the wires are organized up front. There's always a lot of wires on e-bikes, and I think Rad did a decent job of organizing them, but still giving me access to the connectors in case I need them. And I also like how the wiring drops down inside the down tube to keep the middle portion of the bike clean and wire-free. All right, looking at the cockpit, the thing I want to point out most is the handlebars. I really like the 680 millimeter wide BMX style riser bars for a few reasons. First, they're slightly swept back, and I find them to be very comfortable, not just for me, but for almost anyone who rides the bike. Second, they really improve the overall handling, which we'll talk more about later. And well, I guess there is a third reason why I like the riser bars. You can swap them out if you would like and really customize the overall feel of the bike. Next, you'll see the rubber grips and the 2-finger brake levers. They both feel nice and comfortable, and I don't have any real complaints there. Finally, Rad chose to stick with the twist throttle paired with Shimano over-the-bar shifters. I have grown to really like twist throttles, with the only downside being that you then need to pair them with over-the-bar versus rapid-fire shifters. If this were more of a trail-oriented bike, I would say that was a bad move. But given this is a cargo bike, I think the increased control of the twist throttle outweighs not having the rapid fire shifters. Okay, let's walk through the display on the RadWagon 5. So on the left, you have the controller. Up top is where you turn it on. Down below, you have this little button that gets you into the settings. This is your plus, so to increase the PS level. This is your negative, so decrease the assist level. And then here's your left turn signal and your right turn signal. So let's turn it on here. I'm gonna do that by holding this down for just about a second. And you'll see the full color display that Rad has put on this bike. So it is I really do like the fact that they went to full color. It's very easy to see pretty much everything you need to. The top left, you have the watt output of the motor. Here on the top right is the odometer. So we put 167 miles on the bike so far in our testing. Next, it's your battery readout. So this is it's a battery, and there's 4 different bars, and that is all. So it's showing about 3.5 bars on that. Down below, that's actually how much more range you have based on the PS level. So in PS1, it's expecting you to get about another 57 miles. As I increase the PAS settings, you'll notice that that decreases. You can also change this to show a percentage output in the back end, and I'll show you that. And the percent output is actually in 10% increments. So 10, 20, 30, etc. I do kind of wish that they would make that a little more precise, where it showed it from 100 going down to 1% in 1% increments. But I like the fact that you can get an estimated range left. You can switch it to percent output if you would like. On the left here, you'll see the light. So that kicks on every time you turn on the bike. If you hold the up button on the controller, it turns those lights off. I recommend just always leaving them on. It doesn't take a lot from the battery, and it just, even in daytime, it does make it a little more safe for you to be seen by other cars. Next, you have the miles per hour, and then you have the PAS setting. So it goes from 0 up to 5. Now, to see, you can actually push the button on the bottom of the controller, and you'll see the trip time, the trip distance, and the class level. You've noticed we have this set in class 2 right now. If you hold the button down on the bottom of the controller, it gets you into the settings. So you can, the trip clear, you push the down button and it kind of cycles through this. So this is class 2. If I want to change that, you hit the bottom button, it takes it over, and you can push up or down to cycle through things. So this has a class 2, a class 3, 25 miles per hour, class 3, 28 miles per hour. Then you click the bottom button and it kind of locks that in. Units, you can switch from imperial to metric. And then this is where you change the range. This is set to show the remaining range now. If you go in and change that, it's battery SOC. I don't know what SOC stands for, but it basically puts that in the percentage output. Brightness, 100. I just always keep it at 100 myself. Then information, if you click into that, it just shows the display and the controller firmware. And then to go back, you can go back. So there's not a ton of customizations that you can do, but the display, again, it's very simple, it's intuitive, it's bright, and it's a good size. So there's just, I do really like this new display on the RadWagon 5. All right, now for the fun part. We are going to go out on a ride on the RadWagon. Now, there's a couple things you'll notice. It's a wagon, so I did throw on the little child seat, and couldn't get my kid out of school to do this, so meet my new child, Mr. Sandbag. He weighs 50 pounds, and you know, the rear rack with a 120-pound limit should be just fine on that. But I did want to do this using some weight on the back, given that it's a cargo bike. So this entire kind of ride section that I'm going to take you on, keep in mind that I've got that 50 pounds on the back. So with that being said, let's go for a ride. All right, so first up, you can see I've got this supported by that, you know, that dual kickstand down at the bottom. I'm just going to try to show you here what it's like to move that forward with weight. So very easy. Now to put it back up with weight, you'd have to put your foot down and then grab kind of this handle down here and pull back, and it's fairly sturdy. You can, I mean, obviously you've got 50 pounds there. I would not recommend this with a child because they're going to move around, but with gear, etc., should be good. So let's hit it. Okay, so first of all, starting and stopping with the cargo, I really do like how there's the throttle, because if I come to a stop, you know, I've got my foot down, I'm on a stoplight or something, need to get going. Yes, you can pedal, and you'll notice I'm in PAS5 and it gave me a decent kick there, but I actually like to use the throttle for starting. I can kind of really control and modulate that with this twist throttle. I'm not usually a huge fan of twist throttles, but they're kind of growing on me, especially on this type of bike, because I can modulate that speed so easily and so well. So now that we're starting, wanted to first kind of do a speed test. Again, keep in mind I got 50 pounds on the back. We're going to start with the throttle. So we're going to go down here, basically stop, and then we're just going to throttle and see how long it takes. So here we go. And 20. There we go. So that was throttle. So pretty fast. It wasn't crazy punchy off the line. It'd be more if, again, I took off the 50 pounds. I don't mind that, because again, if on a cargo bike, I'm buying it for cargo for one kid, for two kids, I like it being a little more control. Now let's do a pedal test. Now this is set to class 3. So we're gonna see how this goes. Again, starting it, stopping here, and let this person pass. Oh, I'm gonna give them just a second here on the path. Okay, so here we go. Pedal test, PS5,
17, 18, 19 miles, 20 miles per hour, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Didn't quite hit 28, but pretty fast. I did have to start to pedal more, I'd say, after about 23. And in general, it kind of wanted to go between 20 and 23, pedaling in PS5. Now I'm going to cycle through the different assist levels. So here's 0. Get my pedaling legs on. It actually isn't bad. I'm in 7th gear. I shift down. It is the over the handlebar shifter. So I'm here in gear 5. Going about 10, 11 miles an hour, so it's not bad. Let's kick it up to PS1. And I'm not feeling a ton of assist here in PS1. I don't know how often, I mean, I did jump up in speed. It's definitely much more, feels like a normal bike. Let's go to PS2. A little more power output. You see there, I'm up to about 15 miles an hour. Got some traffic up ahead. Always love seeing traffic on the bike paths. Oh, we left. Okay, now we're going to kick it to PS3. And now I'm starting to really feel a lot more power here. I'm going to shift to 6th gear. And I'm going kind of about 18, go to 4. Even more power boost, about 21. Then PS5. Up that hill, 21 miles an hour up that hill really easily. And so yeah, I kind of wanted to go, let me turn around here. I'll kick it back in PS5, given that we're going to kind of get to a more windy part of this trail. Okay, now we'll kick back into PS5. And you'll kind of see how it kind of felt like it wants to be right about that 20 to 23 miles per hour. Shift up. Slow down while I pass this person again here. Okay, here we go. So I'm in 7th gear now. 22, 23, 24. Yeah, so with 50 pounds on the back, it wants to kind of go 24, 25 miles per hour. I'm not ghost pedaling. As I get higher than 26, 27, it still feels pretty natural pedaling wise. So kind of my takeaway from that, motor power, really nice. Drivetrain shifts well, doesn't ghost pedal. I didn't really have to get below 4th gear. So if you're on flats, kind of like this, and you're in just kind of like PS2 or 3, you're going to be most likely in 4th or 5th, 6th gear. You're going to save the, you know, lower gears for the hill climbing type stuff. Okay, so now let's get it up to speed here and just kind of show you the brakes. And they've done really well on all my testing. I've always felt very comfortable on them. I've got 2 fingers on the brake. Kind of get it up to about 22, 23-ish, 24, and then we'll stop. So felt really controlled there. You know, that was not a panic stop by any means. But even with that weight on the back, the bike stopped really well. And so just in general, kind of handling wise, let's go back down to PS3 here. A little more cruising speed on this path. As I've ridden this more, again with cargo, without cargo, just how stiff that frame feels gives this a really good feel on the road. Obviously on a path like this, you're not going to be, you're not weaving in and out too much, just, slight turns like this, but it just feels very solid, feels very stable all the way around, and I feel very comfortable. Like, I would have no problem putting 1 or 2 kits on the back of this. In fact, I have, and I've always felt sturdy, stable, and just really comfortable on the bike. The front suspension, those fatter tires, I've got them aired down just slightly, but they're still totally fine with this weight. It gives it a really nice cushioned feel as I go over these small little bumps. Kind of just helps take some of that edge off. And so I really, for a wagon, for a cargo wagon, this is, as far as rear hub goes, one of my favorites to ride around, just because how smooth and how stiff and controllable it feels. So with that being said, I'm going to pull off up here into the neighborhood. We'll kind of take some sharper turns and talk about what it handles, where it handles if you are kind of more commuting or riding around the neighborhood with your kids. Okay, so we're now in the neighborhood, and I want to just kind of talk again a little more about the handling. I already talked about starting, stopping, how it does speed-wise, the motor-wise. But a big deal with cargo bikes, when you got to make these turns, be safe when you come up to stop signs, etc. How does it do? So again, I really like that throttle. First thing that I do want to point out when you're turning is, let me flip a UE here so I can kind of talk about it while I'm doing it. But as you turn, it feels very controlled, very easy to turn. There is a slight, as you move to the right or to the left with the steering, there is a slight pull. Yeah, people don't pay too much attention to bikers sometimes. So you do feel a little bit different when you have weight on versus off, where I almost feel just a little bit more of a pull towards the side that I'm turning to. It's controlled, it's safe, there's nothing to worry about. Just notice that, and it's going to take just a second for you to kind of remember that when you start riding it for the first time. Like here, as I turn left, I'm going to flip again another UE. Right here is where it starts. I can feel it just a teeny bit of that weight. Don't rail a turn at 25 miles an hour if you've got cargo on the back, but that's kind of an obvious thing. Let's get away from this lawnmower. Other thing I really like about this from riding around in neighborhoods, again, you kind of saw that car not pay attention to me much, but the turn signals. So to turn signal, I just hit it once to the right. Always stop at the stop signs. Use that throttle, get going, and you turn. And I still would recommend using your hand signals, because people, again, aren't going to pay too much attention to you. And then don't forget to turn that off. I tend to do that. So you have to just once to turn the signal on, once to turn it off. And it's kind of one of those things that I talk to people and they think it's kind of weird to put turn signals on a bicycle. I actually love it, and I do think it should be standard, especially on bikes that you're going to be riding around neighborhoods, on the roads. And this you definitely can with those class 3 speeds. If you're delivering things, that class 3 speed actually helps. Having turn signals, just any little thing that you can do helps even more. So I like all the lighting, and just in general, you can tell that Rad has really thought through this. And I really do enjoy this bike from a commuter standpoint. If I'm going to and from work, if I'm putting my kids on and just cruising around over the weekend, or if I'm, gonna do Uber Eats and deliver stuff on a bicycle, is also a really good option. So I really do think they've done a good job. There's not much that I have to complain about, given kind of the price range and the performance of the bike. So hope again, this kind of ride quality section was helpful to you. If you have any other questions on how the bike rides, how it feels that we didn't cover, please leave those comments down below, and we'll you know, we'll try to get back to you.
All right, now for my favorite section, Ben's takes, or as like I like to say, Ben's deep thoughts. So this is kind of our mechanics corner where we're getting Ben's views on the RadWagon 5. He put it together, took it out of the box, assembled it, put it together. So we're gonna have him dive into this and kind of tell you what he thinks about it from a mechanic standpoint. Before we do that though, just wanna give again another shout out to Feedback Sports. Thank you for sponsoring the videos. And honestly, this is why I wanted Feedback to sponsor these. This Pro Mechanic HD bike stand is just literally the best one that I know of. This is an 85-pound bike and it's just holding it like a rock. So again, thank you very much, Feedback Sports. With that being said, Ben, tell us what you liked, what you think Rad can improve on the RadWagon 5, and I'm just going to step out and let you do your thing.
All right, Justin, thanks. So as far as likes go, I'll work from the front of the bike back. A lot to like about this bike. First and foremost, I love the through axle. The through axle with a short travel fork, 32 millimeter stanchion. This thing is rock solid from the front end. Partner that with a tapered threadless fork and stem. What that means to you as a rider is this thing's gonna feel bomb-proof, very stable in the front end, even if you do put some weight on it. A threadless stem like this just means every bike shop near you is going to have replacement parts. Maybe you want a longer stem, maybe you want a stem with more rise to it, doesn't matter. Very universally replaceable parts. I love that about the bikes like this. I really like these wide tires, very voluminous. And what that means is when you start putting a load, whether it again on the front or the back, these big fat tires are gonna make it so that you can pump them up and they're gonna handle any kind of weight load that you put on them. Even with that wide of a tire, you really feel good when you're into the turns too. It just feels really stable. Put a reflective strip on it, so that adds to the safety if you're out at dusk or at night riding around with traffic. You always gotta love that. One big thing on a cargo bike that I love about this one is the width of the brake rotors. These are 2.3 millimeter brake rotors. It's very common on most bikes to have a 1.8 millimeter thick rotor. Now you say, oh, is really a half of a millimeter that big of a difference? I say yes, absolutely. You're gonna have a lot more stopping power, especially when you start putting weight. And you're talking groceries, you're talking kids, whatever you put on this bike, a thicker brake rotor is just gonna feel better and stop with more control every time. The kickstand on this bike, I love it. Super easy to use. When you've got it right next to you, you can just lift up on the rack a little bit, put your foot on the stand and it just falls right into place, holds the bike really stable. Love that. One thing that I'm impressed by, it lends itself to the ride quality on this bike, is the battery placement. A, it's very, very easy to get out. B, because it's so low in the frame, it makes it feel like, because the weight is there and the center of the bike, this thing likes to stick to the ground. It doesn't feel bouncy or pogo-y or out of control at any point. So battery placement, key on this one. The seat post is what's called a telescoping style. So you can raise the lower post out of the frame, but then you've got the upper post, which you can raise also. So this is going to accommodate a very wide range of riders with longer legs or shorter legs. I love that about a bike like this, just because with one size, it makes one size may not fit all, but one size will fit most on this particular bike. Another thing that I like about this is the proprietary rack system for panniers. It's easy to bolt on for a mechanic. It takes no time to assemble this thing. They've got rubber bumpers on here, so when you put the plastic panniers on here, even with a load and you're going over bumps, these rubber bumpers dampen the noise and of course just make it sound smoother. So great addition, good thought. I mean, they really designed this bike with purpose and certain things in mind to, as a user, enhance your ride. And as far as things that I can recommend that they consider for the next models, or you as a rider, the chain, this is an all steel chain, which every chain is steel. However, there are a lot of chains that you can buy on the market that are zinc coated. You'll notice that when you see a chain that looks very silver or almost whitish, that's a zinc coating. So you're just not going to have to deal with corrosion or a rusty chain or anything like that. One thing that I will touch on, and I usually do with these types of bikes, is the bottom bracket spindle. Here again is what's called a square taper spindle. I've mentioned this in other reviews. This is the same type of spindle. When I started working on bikes in 1992, they were using this type of a bottom bracket spindle. A couple of decades later, I would like to think that they're going to see some improvement there in the way of an oversized or ISIS style spindle. That would just help out. I'm not the biggest fan of head tube mounted racks. on the front here, because what that can do in some cases is when you put weight on the front end, and you have to think, a rack might weigh 4 or 5 pounds. A gallon of milk on average maybe weighs 8 pounds. What that'll do is put weight on the front end and potentially pre-compress the fork. Now, it's not really a problem because you can adjust the suspension fork to be stiffer and even lock it out, which is a really great part about this fork. But when you have weight on the front end, it just adds weight to your turning, so it just feels a little more cumbersome. But that's just me being picky and personal. A lot of people like that. They put weight on the front end, it's really no problem.
Awesome. No, thank you again, Ben. Just like always, love that.
All right, thanks, Justin.
All right, so it's kind of obvious that I'm a pretty big fan of the improvements Rad has made with the Wagon 5. We think it's one of the better electric cargo bikes on the market, and it's significantly cheaper than many mid-drive cargo bike options. Yes, it's a little bit more than some other rear hub cargo bikes, but I think the price is warranted given the extra stiff frame, the resin encased safe shield battery, and the improved torque on the motor. Overall, this feels like a very safe cargo bike that is still fun to ride as a daily commuter. And I also want to point out that Rad is a very established brand at this point in the game. So you're getting some confidence that there will be support in the future for the bike, which is a big deal. So many new brands that are trying to break through into the US market can't offer that yet. So to answer my original questions, yes, I think the RadWagon 5 is a significant upgrade over the RadWagon 4. I think the RadWagon 4 is a great deal price-wise, but do recommend this newer version over it. And finally, I do think this is one of the best options if you are someone who is looking for a car replacement. I drive a minivan, and while I will state that this won't replace that, there's just no way I'm getting 4 surfboards, 2 paddleboards, 6 people, and 4 bikes on this thing. I absolutely think the RadWagon 5 is a great option for replacing your car for everything from grocery shopping to riding to the movies with your kid on the back. It's safe, it's comfortable, and it really does ride well. With that being said, I hope this review was helpful. As always, if there was something we didn't cover, or if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. You will also see in the video description a link where you can buy the bike directly from Rad, and a link to our full in-depth written review where you can find full resolution photos of the bike. Also, please like and subscribe to our channel. That's actually one of the best ways to help support us and keep the channel going. Again, I'm Justin with EBR, and I hope to see you out on the trail soon.